The following video contains spoilers. We suggest watching the episodes alone in the dark. Hello, Wolfpack! We're back, and now we're moving on to the next step of Twilight Zone month. So let's celebrate with a look at one of the most popular episodes in the franchise's history. We are checking out The Monsters Are on Maple Street. That's right, the 2000s remake of The Monsters Are on Maple Street. Yeah, that's the appropriate reaction most fans have towards this one. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Twilight Zone's highlights, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street is often regarded as one of the Twilight Zone's greatest stories ever made. It received critical acclaim, massive fan admiration, and is cited as one of the most outstanding hits in all of horror. Not only is this a fantastic Twilight Zone tale, it is seen as one of the greatest stories of cinematic history ever made. It was that loved, folks. The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street is not just some fan-favorite episode of a campy horror show, it is a landmark in cinema. This tale has been taught in film classes, drama writing, and even read in elementary school English classes all across America because it was that influential upon people. This Rod Serling masterwork is held in the greatest of all respects it can obtain, is a classic staple in television, is an icon for the horror genre, and has aged remarkably well like fine wine, being one of the most brilliant stories of all entertainment forever and ever. It will be loved, appreciated, intelligent, relevant, and remain powerful for generations to come. So naturally, the 2000s Twilight Zone came along and decided to remake it. They thought, yeah, well, let's try copying that iconic masterpiece, but do it better. And by better, it meant worse. How can they recapture such a powerful lightning in a bottle twice? Easy. Their version was remade to be more modernized, made more realistic, and up to date with our present day, while also delivering a social commentary on the 9/11 paranoia. My thoughts exactly, John Luke. Naturally, I'll be judging this better claim for myself by making small comparisons between this superior remake and the classic that is not as good as G3 Twilight Zone's updated version. You can all probably guess that we're in for a very fun adventure this time, and are probably looking forward to the pain I'll be suffering from the 2000s Twilight Zone, trying to teach us about terrorism, while also urinating on a beloved horror story. But before I enter my trip into absolute hell, I just need to warn folks who don't know the basic background behind this piece of crap. For those of you who are too young or just plain don't know, allow me to take you on a trip back in time. The date, September 11th, 2001, was a day of infamy for the United States, because that was the day when our nation was subjected to a shocking terrorist attack that destroyed a famous symbol of freedom and unity in our eyes. Thousands of people died, and America finally woke the heck up to the grim reality of terrorism. We had to face the harsh truth that our country was not untouchable. We endured a tragic loss of innocent life, and toughened up in order to prepare to confront the vile terrorists who hated us, and other nations like ours, due to our, shall we say, differences in politics. 9/11 was a tragic event that shook up our whole country, and many, many American TV shows, movies, newsreels, and other media platforms dealt with this devastating occurrence in their own unique ways. either cheering us up from the loss, uniting us together to stand strong, warning us to be prepared for war, or just plain making us proud to be an American during a bleak, troubling time we weren't ready for. I'd go more into detail, but I was only a kitten when 9/11 happened, and I never really grasped the magnitude of the situation until I was entering middle school. So I cannot personally confirm if what happens in this episode was truly how we felt or not. Sorry, but I was just too young to remember that time period. What I do know is that the 2000s Twilight Zone of all shows was not as good at teaching us about terrorism either, and are most definitely going to screw it up royally. And considering that this was the same show which taught us how deleting your porn account on your computer history is a grand romantic gesture towards your significant others, you can all probably guess how well they'll be handling the issues presented here. Oh joy, this is going to be fun. One last thing. Now, I did not screw up writing out the title of this remake. That is seriously how it's spelt. The original Rod Serling Twilight Zone title of this episode is actually The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. But the remake took it a step further by redubbing it The Monsters Are on Maple Street. That should give you all a hint on the subtlety we'll be dealing with here on this one. So with all that boring stuff out of the way, let's finally get to my torture tonight. Strap yourselves in, ladies and gentlemen, because the 2000s Twilight Zone is going to teach us about terrorism, while desperately trying to recapture the old glory of a beloved classic. This is my review on the G3 Twilight Zone Super Serial Horror Remake, The Monsters Are on Maple Street. So, our episode opens up on, where else? A place called Maple Street, in some generic white peopleville, where all ominous vibes are completely ruined when we get this inappropriate soundtrack. And just like that, the show kills the mood. I mean, wow. Wow. Just wow. This is how you open up your remake on a fantastic horror story, TV writers? You open up Maple Street with some piece of crap rock music. Rock music. You're opening up a Twilight Zone classic with fun-loving rock music. Way to fail at making us dread the unknown before the first second mark. I mean, could you imagine any other horror stories using this awful soundtrack? So yeah, the music does not fit. But if that somehow did not dash all your hopes that this could still be an okay remake, well, guess what? Forrest Whitaker shows up via bad green screen effects, where he totally gives away the entire plot twist.
Maple Street, USA. A suburban community on a pleasant Saturday afternoon. But in a few moments, everything will change for the residents of Maple Street, as they discover that the monsters they fear may already be among them.
Bravo, remake, bravo. You just had your narrator completely give away that the big twist is that the true monsters are the humans who live here and not the supernatural boogeymen. Way to go, Forrest. Thanks so much for telling us that the monsters are already among us before transitioning to the human neighbors talking to each other and looking irritated. You gave it all away. Anticipating suspense? What's that? Also, I know I've cried about this before, but I'll say it again. That green screen is just awful. Holy cow, could this show just not get Forrest Whitaker to show up on location to film his few seconds of narration like Rod Serling did? They really went out of their way to cheaply green screen the guy into half the episode so poorly. Why? Was it that difficult to get Forrest to physically show up for a couple of seconds? Though if I were Forrest Whitaker, I'd probably be ashamed to be in this schlock too. So I guess I just answered my own question. But geez, that effect looks so bad that it makes our channel's visuals look like James Cameron CGI in comparison. Heck, they make the CGI snakes from Jake the Snake look like Lord of the Rings in comparison. It's that bad. Hey, look everyone, now Wolf is in the show. Doesn't he just flow so seamlessly? So, after that spoilerific intro, we then meet, our main characters. Now, in the original Monsters Are Due on Maple Street tale, we didn't exactly have a central main character. Everyone in the neighborhood were the main characters. We followed each and every one of them in their typical daily lives, learn their personalities, question who was trustworthy and who was not, and eventually, all of their characters followed the exact same character arc. They were a peace-loving neighborhood who love each other and party together, but after a supernatural event, they all turn against each other, and eventually they all hate one another, and are driven so paranoid to the point of turning hostile, psychotic, and violent. Their story arc was going from a bunch of friendly faces to savage monsters killing each other Purge style. However, on the superior remake, all of these people are one-dimensional stereotypes of stupid Americans, and they all already hate each other from the start. This completely takes away from the larger impact the original had, turning peaceful, suburban neighbors into violent psychopaths thanks to their paranoia. The remake instead lays out their disdain for one another right away to show us that they all hate each other before the bad things start to happen. Granted, it does try to use this to make us believe in their turn to the dark side by planting the seeds of distrust early on, but it also makes us hate everyone and not feel scared by them suddenly changing into disturbed bastards at each other's throats because you totally see it coming from a mile away. Yep. This is the first problematic issue with the writing. The main characters hate each other from the beginning, and it takes away from the emotional impact of them going to the dark side because they're all already awful jerks too early. We don't care what happens to them either by doing this, because they're unsympathetic pricks and not relatable people. Character arcs? What are those? And as I said, they all are simply one-dimensional stereotypes of average stupid Americans directly pulled from a political cartoon. They're all here attending a neighborhood watch meeting to discuss the unity of Maple Street, while also establishing their personalities and names. So, who are our roster of characters on the remake version? Well, we have Will Graham, who is pretty much our de facto main character. He's the snarky, badass rebel who doesn't get along with his fellow busybody neighbors, because he disagrees with their conformist ways. We have Will's ditzy, overly emotional housewife Holly Graham, who is pretty much a total blank slate here to be his exposition buddy and just be somebody to support him. Sorry, ladies, they try to set up Holly as a strong, independent woman who just wants a true loving relationship with her man, but she ends up having so little screen time that you'd be forgiven if you accidentally forgot her name. We have Dylan, the drunk, pathetic, obnoxious, douchey, manly man, who is such a loser that he still wears his high school Letterman jacket at age 40 to remind himself that he was somebody important once. Dylan is, of course, our idiot bully character, who does nothing but cause issues for everyone else, cries a lot, and tries to force his own ways onto everyone else. Oh my gosh, we actually have an idiot bully character on the Twilight Zone. An idiot bully on the Twilight Zone. Not just on the Twilight Zone, but on a remake of one of the greatest horror stories of all time. An episode so good that it didn't even require an idiot bully character to begin with. Dang it, Twilight Zone. As you will soon see, he's just an intolerant bully who makes the conflict escalate because Idiot Bully is an idiot bully. We also have Idiot Bully's fat, stupid son, Gamer Kid. He's pretty much our sad stand-in for the little boy of the original Maple Street. But you see, he's a fat, stupid moron, like all American children were at the time, because paper-thin social commentary. Yeah, Fat Kid does nothing but act as the stupid comic relief and a yes-man to his idiot bully daddy. We also have Black Nerd. No, not that one. Who simply acts as a Mr. Exposition character, explaining things for the real main characters. He's pretty much pointless. And the last character we have with a name is Phyllis, who is essentially a Susie homemaker stereotype who thinks women these days should just stay at home and clean up after their man, because chicks should just let the men handle all the danger. Yeah, she's just a painful metaphor of being a shallow sheep following the commands of others. So she sucks. And lastly, we have all the background characters, who do nothing of real importance and just stand there with the crowd.
I just follow the crowd.
Yep, these forgettable, one-dimensional morons are all our main characters. They barely exhibit any individual personalities, speak in very cliched dialogue, and lack notable traits of their own, but we're stuck with them. So, now that you know who all our key figures are, here's a list of all the characters I love. And moving on. Apparently, the entire Maple Street neighborhood gets together at meetings to discuss boring things like painting houses, holiday decor, and other things that suck. Oh, but we also get this subtle dialogue foreshadowing their painfully obvious absurd unity.
I'm a little confused about the decorations. People are just going to put up anything they want.
No, everybody gets to decorate. You get to decide whether you want snowmen or, say, white men.
Oh, but it's so nice when all the houses look the same.
They go on for a few seconds discussing irrelevant crap until they all suddenly start dropping hints of not getting along with a mysterious new family who recently moved in on the block. Since the newbies live at an isolated house, are almost never seen outside, and don't appear to socialize with everyone else. Now, ordinarily, I would say who cares, but then the idiot bully whines about how those new neighbors are weird, and they didn't even celebrate the holidays with everyone else. Gasp! How does he even know about this? Well, because the idiot bully noticed that they never waved an American flag.
Well, that family's a weird bunch. Did you guys notice? They were the only ones on the block that did not fly a flag on Veterans Day.
They just moved in, Dylan. Maybe they hadn't unpacked their flag yet.
Come on, Will. There were plenty of flags on sale down at Home Depot. They could have picked one up.
Those bastards. They deserve to be crucified and burned. You know, the funny thing is, I thought that to myself as a joke at first, but then something just as stupid as that actually happens later. This superior remake sure does make all the idiocy come true. Hey, can I just ask all the older viewers who lived through 9/11 a question? Was this really a thing? Did anyone around your area ever give people a suspicious look or gossip about not waving an American flag on a holiday or whatever? because it just feels so on the nose when this show does it that I find it so hard to take it in seriously. Like, we get it, Patriot Fever was a thing and America should be proud, but this is so forced. I know this might seem a tad nitpicky, but trust me, it's about to get much, much worse. So after their riveting conversation about flags, the plot literally comes bursting in when all their electronics malfunction and a massive earthquake goes off, rocking all of Maple Street and taking the town's power grid offline. Oh no, now how will we function without YouTube videos? So the Block Watch check out all the commotion outside and try to figure out exactly what happened here. We do get, in all honesty, a pretty cute in-joke when the fat kid suggests that it was aliens. However, the adults blow him off and say that's stupid because aliens don't exist. I beg to differ. Alright, remake, I'll give you that one since that was pretty humorous. In the original story, it was indeed aliens at fault for all the dark, spooky happenings going on. But on the remake, the adults instantly theorized that it was really the work of
Terrorism.
Yep. The Twilight Zone is outright stating that it wasn't aliens behind this event because that's stupid, so they instantly jump to the conclusion that it was all terrorists. Now, I do agree that it was pretty cheesy how aliens were behind all the wacky shenanigans in the original, but that wasn't the point. You see, the aliens were actually a metaphor for terrorists, and their attack on Maple Street was supposed to show off the hysterical paranoia America had during the Cold War era. They were meant to represent communists, the Red Scare, the fear that Russian agents were infiltrating American society to tear us all apart from inside the homeland. However, the aliens could also represent more than just simple communists. They could be a clever allegory for any terrorist or anti-American faction of any time, since it's never made clear enough for the viewer to label them under one category. The true horror was the devastating psychological horror they unleashed upon Maple Street by just dividing our trust in one another. The aliens metaphorically represented terrorists taking advantage of the fear people have when their worldview is shook up. However, the remake totally destroys all that clever writing by simply painting the unknown villains precisely what they are: terrorists who hate America. All it does is strip away any cleverness and nuance in the writing by spelling everything out for the audience like we're too stupid to comprehend the original. Sure, it makes the story more realistic, but then this episode shoots itself in the foot later when they try to pull the same punches as the old version did once the madness hits the fan. I don't like this change, because it treats the viewers like morons, because they have to tell us everything. They purge all the clever writing by stating how there's no supernatural stuff here, and worst of all, it misses the point completely, because this episode thinks that all the horror came from the terrorist themes, when in reality, it came from the human paranoia. It wasn't just the villains hiding in the shadows that were scary, it was society's distrustful and selfish nature. That's all just flushed down the drain with this terrorism outcry. Not to mention, it really dates the premise almost instantly. The terrorists frequently being hinted at all throughout this episode are obviously meant to refer to the deranged Muslim fundamentalists, Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, and other Middle Eastern terrorists we were up against during 9/11. At least with the aliens, they could symbolize political enemies from any time period. But on this show, they strongly hint that these terrorists are the exact same ones that were connected to 9/11 and the anthrax scares. It just feels so dated when you know what they're talking about was during a totally different time period that we eventually got past. I'm sorry, people, I don't mean to offend anyone who remembers this dark period of history, but the reboot Twilight Zone is going to be twisting my tail the more we get into their political discussions. Or should I say, political failures. In short, the setting is dated beyond all belief, and does kind of cripple the remake by making it take place in a particular time period that's long forgotten. But back in the plot, everyone, of course, believes that Maple Street was attacked by terrorists. All except for Will, though, who tries to rationalize the situation and warns everyone that there are no terrorists, they're just jumping to crazy conclusions. Well, if a mass blackout wasn't caused by terrorists, then you're the crazy one for not believing that idea. However, all the neighbors point out that their town is next to the county's water reservoir, so it must be an attack to poison America's water supply and kill people. So, has a blackout just never happened on this street? I mean, it wasn't that abnormal for a power outage to occur pre-9/11, you know. We weren't that cray-cray. They all try to drive off to regroup with their families, some of whom are children stuck at a soccer practice, but alas, none of their cars seem to work at all. Now this was a legitimately foreboding moment in the original because all of the neighbors realize that even their electronics that didn't need to be plugged in or just use batteries failed to operate at all, with some technology even activating on its own from time to time, totally out of their control and leaving a haunting impression. However, on the remake, we get a dragged-out montage of everyone testing their cars to see if any of them still work. Nope! They lost everything that needs electricity. Appliances, cell phones, cars, the works. One of the guys in the background very wisely suggests that they just go to the schools on foot while sticking together as a group for safety in order to get all their children and loved ones back. But for some stupid reason, they don't do that. What? Why? That's actually the first smart idea you had all day, yet none of you think that you should travel in groups or save your frightened little children? What the heck is wrong with you? Now, in the original, the Maple Street neighbors feared that something was out there awaiting them, and it was getting a bit dark out, where they feared that it would be easy to get lost or picked off. But on the remake, it's still broad daylight. You have time! You morons! So naturally, our heroes choose not to scout for their own kids and stay cowering in the Black Nerd's house. The Black Nerd worries a bit, but when somebody tries to calmly talk with him, he reacts by acting like a jerk.
Who's coming with me?
Tyrone, it's 15 miles. There's no reason to believe the cars aren't working over there. Maybe everybody's on their way back here right now.
That's easy for you to say, Holly. You don't have any kids.
Geez, that was a sick burn towards someone trying to help you. While together again, the neighbors try to assess the situation, this time in a calm manner, before jumping back to the idea that it was really
Terrorism.
They actually suggest that the terrorists were using an EMP to attack and disable the town. For those of you unfamiliar with heavy-duty technology, an EMP is an electromagnetic pulse. These are certain machines designed with the ability to knock out power of all electronic devices in order to incapacitate an enemy by taking away all of their energy. The military uses these devices to combat terrorists and other warmongering rivals, but they can also be used by evil factions to assault innocent or unprepared cities, such as Maple Street. Some EMPs can also give off such a powerful surge of energy that it might feel like a bomb going off, thus explaining how the street both lost power and endured an earth-shattering shake all across their homes. It's actually a logical theory to assume that it might have been the cause behind their town's sudden power loss. However, they also expect us to believe that terrorists, as in people outside of America, somehow gained access to this advanced technology, despite the well-known fact that this was set during the time when America was cracking down on security and would most definitely know if terrorists smuggled an EMP generator into some random suburb. Because an EMP is not something that one can simply hide under their clothes. I mean, come on, guys. I know 9/11 was a horrible tragedy, and terrorism is a serious issue, but you can't honestly expect us to believe that these terrorists are like Cobra Command. The terrorists that attacked America hijacked airplanes and stole technology. They didn't have access or create it themselves. You're giving these terrorists way too much credit for the sake of the plot. How could terrorists possibly sneak advanced weapons into the country anyway?
Let's hope Osama bin Laden doesn't know shooting. God, I hope I get it. I hope I get it. How many people does he need? How many boys? How many girls?
Oh, but don't worry, because the idiot bully gets totally drunk and goes to get his gun, because Lord knows that will ease all this tension. Luckily, Will attempts to calm everyone down, but they all still act super dumb and blame terrorists despite having zero evidence. Then, completely out of nowhere, the idiot bully suggests that the mysterious new neighbors might be behind it, because they didn't panic at all or show their faces out in public when the power went down like everyone else did. Oh, well, with flawless logic like that, you can bet that absolutely everyone believes he's on to something. So, like a total psychopath, the idiot bully offers to go over to the mysterious new neighbor's home, blind, stinking drunk, and with a gun at his side to get some answers. But thankfully, badass rebel Will tags along with him to politely ask the newbies a few questions. We actually do get a rare suspenseful scene of the two guys slowly approaching the new house on the block, which is just dripping with ambiguous dread, so there were some moments slightly good on this pile. We also get, if you can believe it or not, subtle dialogue between our main characters. As the two banter back and forth, we get some very small hints that Will and Idiot Bully are actually cops who worked together before and have very little tolerance for each other. That honestly shocked me, because would any of you really look at these two and piece it together that they were police officers? It's honestly one of the rare subtle scenes.
Hey, Marshall, we are not at work. So do not talk to me like I work on the line. Sorry.
Dylan, when these people are ready to panic, you and me are the only ones who head for emergencies here. I don't want these people flying off the handle.
Huh. That's actually a good character moment, giving depth to our main characters. I would say good job, remake, but this won't be enough to redeem everything else we see later. Also, way to shatter our investment in this episode's realism by suggesting that Idiot Bully is a cop. I'm so sure all the Americans out there feel so safe knowing that this intolerant, racist, drunken douchebag is working on the police force watching over this hood. Jeez, even Chief Wiggum is a better role model cop than this moron.
I'm afraid we have no leads, but I can safely say our pool did not suffer.
Looks to me like you suffered a lot.
Oh, geez, Lou. How long are we gonna let me keep drinking this thing?
So, the two off-the-clock coppers ask the neighbors a few questions, and if they're alright, but they ignore them and hide in their bunker. But of course, the Idiot Bully makes the oh-so-wise decision of getting hammered some more and only makes things worse.
your neighbor. I'm just checking to see everything's okay.
Come on, open the damn door. What the hell are you doing in there?
Yeah, big shock they never respond to them. I wonder why. Also, here's a question. Where the heck is the idiot bully even storing all those beers? We literally see him going through a couple of beer bottles, and he even opens up some new ones like he just had them on himself this whole time. Where is he storing them? Does he just have a cooler up his anus? I guess it's right next to the writer's notes. So yep, they get no answers, and they distrust those new neighbors even more. Later that night, we get a surprisingly great ominous shot of the mysterious new neighbor's house that does look pretty dang creepy. Seriously, these shots of the creepy powered-down house are easily the best parts of this whole garbage fire. They do feel straight out of a horror movie. While watching the dark new neighbor's house, Will and his wife Holly discuss the situation and how weird those new neighbors are for not talking to them. Yeah, it's like they were trying to remain calm in a troubling situation. What freaks, right? I think now's a good time to discuss two other problems in this story. The mysterious off-screen neighbors and the focus on Will. Number 1, the neighbors. Now, the episode doesn't precisely spell it out for us, but according to the Twilight Zone wiki, the story strongly, and I do mean strongly, implies that those mysterious new neighbors who everyone is wary of are, well, they might be Middle Eastern. Yeah, for reals, the episode tries to hint that the mysterious new neighbors who everyone suspects is in on a terrorist plot are actually a new Middle Eastern family on the block. The Twilight Zone Wikipedia straight up tells us that this was the intent, and was the explanation as to why the Maple Street residents question them and see them as something bizarre. Now, we never do actually physically see the new neighbors in this at all outside of some Once-ler-style shadow appearances, but considering the questionable attitudes everyone has, and this episode's refusal to show us these characters, you can kind of get where they're going with this. I shouldn't have to tell anyone this, but not all Middle Easterns are terrorists. Most Middle Eastern people actually moved out of their country to get away from terrorism and intolerance. Yet they do face discrimination for the actions of real terrorists thanks to our paranoia. I'll admit that this could have been a real epic way to show us the horrible persecutions Middle Eastern people faced when ignorant Americans suspected them of being violent criminals or treated them with profiling, but as you can guess, this is reboot Twilight Zone. And they naturally do nothing with this concept at all, and reduce the new family to props rather than people. I, for one, actually liked the idea that the mysterious new family might be Middle Easterns, and thought that there was such good potential in this, but nothing really comes of this except an obvious statement about scapegoating others. No deeper thought whatsoever. Keep in mind, this episode aired back when the Patriot Act was a new happening thing, and this episode could have spoken against that, but instead, they go for the cheap shock value instead of something deeper than terrorism and racism bad. However, all this does is make us hate the main characters even more because they look like a bunch of unsympathetic racists. We felt sorry for the Maple Street neighborhood in the original because they were losing their minds and crumbling under fear-inducing paranoia, but all these people are terrible at the start of the story, and simply go from bad people to worse people, losing any chance of us forming a link with them because they turned against each other too early. This episode rushes the violent confrontations between the residents too soon, to the point where you kind of question how these people have even lasted this long without killing each other before the mystery unravels. This could have been a clever commentary on how sometimes neighbors don't get along with each other like back in the golden days, but it ultimately goes nowhere with the concept. As usual, the reboot Twilight Zone has a good idea here, but they fumble it up with bad writing and a refusal to push out a clear message. And this leads me to my number 2 issue here. The family being shunned by the residents gets no character in favor of focusing on Will. Instead of focusing on a persecuted family, we're instead focusing on a boring, bland white boy reacting to all of this. As I said earlier, all of the Maple Street residents are the main characters, because they all end up getting the same story arc. They go from rational, kind-hearted people united as one, into unstable, paranoid monsters turning against each other. However, this remake makes the mistake of focusing on Will as if he was the central protagonist. Will is the voice of reason, meant to be the only sane man who tries to calm everyone down from their insanity, while also acting as an audience surrogate we can see ourselves as. And this is the problem. We're supposed to see ourselves in the shoes of the whole Maple Street neighborhood, not just one guy. We're meant to learn that we are all not above the fall into insane paranoia, prejudice, and can be broken when pushed and pushed towards the point of breaking. Everyone can melt down.
See, madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push.
However, since Will has not and never reaches that breaking point, we officially gain a hero who is above everyone else and works against the moral, that we're all flawed in the end, and nobody is above being driven insane with paranoia and prejudice, because Will overcomes that. Sorry for the early spoilers, folks, but everyone in the original story goes nuts and starts assaulting one another. No one is above falling down the slippery slope and giving in to our weaker habits. The point is that we can all be driven to a breaking point. Nobody is above getting tricked by someone else. True, we can work to better ourselves, but it was a commentary on how paranoia causes us to tear apart friendships, peace, and trust between everyone. Some of us can overcome it, but you do have to accept that it was there to begin with and does occur. Unfortunately, Will never gives into that paranoia, and he still manages to keep a cool head on when he can't find answers either. They made Will too perfect, and unintentionally soil the moral in the end by having a single mouthpiece person not join the insanity by the end. All of Maple Street was supposed to be our audience surrogate, not just one guy who already didn't trust the neighborhood to begin with and being right about his distrust of everyone. In fact, in the end, Will was distrustful of everyone too, yet he's rewarded as the hero in the end. It just misses the point on the message that the Maple Street neighborhood could be you. They could be us, and could be where you live. Maple Street is the average American neighborhood, being driven to madness easily, yet the remake ruins this by having somebody adapting to the weirdness while the others cartoonishly break down and scream,
Who's attacking us?
The terrorists! Everyone in your homes, now!
In short, Will feels like a Gary Sue who works against the moral of this tale. Speaking of fools, Holly talks to her boyfriend Will about how she wants to fit in with Maple Street and be accepted by them. But Will doesn't want to do that because he detests the neighbors. Holly dreams of starting a family here and assimilating with all these weirdos, yet Will just can't because he's too much of a rebel.
Stop acting so smug like you're the only one that knows what's going
Holly or Dylan is afraid his sperm count will drop if he actually used his brain for 5 minutes?
They're our neighbors.
You wanted to move here, honey. I didn't.
I thought it was a good place to settle in and start a family. I'm scared. Something little disrupts her life. Nobody takes it in stride anymore. Maybe the way the world is right now, we can't help but react that way. I don't want to be like that.
Okay, let's not be.
This is a subplot that goes absolutely nowhere. Yeah, no kitten, Holly's character arc is totally meaningless. This is just an oh-so-subtle foreshadowing moment of how Holly wants to join the neighborhood life while Will struggles to do so, pretty much letting us all know that she's going to choose the crazy neighbors over him and join the kill the terrorist crowd spiraling out of control. Them talking about raising a family is totally superfluous in the grand scheme of things, especially if you know how this will all be playing out. But then they overhear the idiot bully getting drunk outside again, and he tries starting a riot with the neighborhood, shouting that the terrorists must be killed, panicking everyone as he shouts his insane ramblings at them.
We don't know yet if we're under attack. If we haven't been attacked, then where is everybody? And why are they just leaving us here to fend for ourselves?
The government will do something. My husband, you know he's a captain. He'll send someone and they'll rescue us.
Shut up, Phyllis.
Okay, that was kind of funny. Though I'm not certain if it was meant to be.
Shut up, Phyllis.
Will comes out, trying to calm down the drunken idiot, but for no reason at all, and with little to no build-up whatsoever, the idiot bully confronts him and challenges his authority.
Nobody's coming. But you were going to help. Stop patronizing me.
You're scaring everyone.
What did you call me?
Wait, what?
You're scaring everyone.
What did you call me?
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 Great continuity.
He didn't even call you anything. You all heard that, right? Will didn't even insult this guy at all, yet he's acting like he was just name-called or something. He didn't call you anything, you dope. I have seriously watched this episode multiple times in many other formats, and not once does Will ever name-call him something. I feel like the actor was supposed to insult the idiot bully here, but he screwed up his line, and they just left the mistake in anyway, because he never insults this guy, despite idiot bully acting like he did. They seriously missed a major detail here, leading to them arguing, yet they left it in anyway. How do you even screw up something like that? Where the heck is the editor? Nothing but grade A editing here on this remake of an iconic classic, huh guys? So, if that wasn't dumb enough, the idiot bully then assaults Will and attempts to murder him. Yes, really, he seriously snaps just like that and tries to kill his cop coworker in front of dozens of witnesses.
You don't want me to think you're a jerk, then stop acting like one.
Oh no, it's the car that ran over Drake! No, instead, the only functioning vehicle here actually belongs to the mysterious Middle Eastern neighbors, as we see the car parking in the isolated new house down the block. Yep, somehow the Middle Eastern father has the only working car in town, prompting the residents to suspect the family as terrorists, because they're the only people with working power. Where, like total morons, they all draw crazy Dale Gribble conclusions.
He came back for his family because he knew it was going to happen. They'd have to be pretty stupid terrorists to know they're the only ones with electricity.
There has to be a beacon to show the terrorists where to bomb. If they're after the reservoir,
Well, then they'd die with us.
well, that's what terrorists do. Listen, we don't understand their methods. We wouldn't sacrifice ourselves, but obviously they would.
Shut up, Phyllis.
Hey, I got an idea. Now, this might sound a little crazy, but why don't you try reaching out and talking to them? These idiots dribble on and on about how weird it is that those new neighbors don't socialize with anybody, yet they themselves never do anything to get to know them or even introduce themselves first. How about you guys do something to show them that you're nice and friendly to gain their trust? Not going to gain their attention by acting like self-righteous pricks. Oh, but that would interfere with the lesson about how we stupid Americans think we're above others and only assume the worst. Will, once again, attempts to calm everyone down and at long last suggests trying to talk to them like normal people. But Idiot Bully pulls out a gun and suggests interrogating them with brute force.
That's a stupid plan! Exactly! A stupid plan for a stupid man. Are you high?
Miraculously, Will convinces his nutjob neighbors to give him a chance to negotiate one-on-one with them, and he goes to talk to the father of the house. And if you can believe it or not, we actually get another good scene. We get this eerie, suspenseful moment of Will entering the brightly lit haunted house, talking to the Middle Eastern family off-screen, with only their shadows shown, while the other idiots wait anxiously outside to see how this plays out. I swear, this is honestly the best scene in the whole remake. It's dripping with unsettling atmosphere and keeps you at the edge of your seat, not knowing what the end results are going to be here. I love it. This is the only time this even comes close to something out of the Twilight Zone. If only it would be enough to save this episode later. If only. Will comes out perfectly A-OK, yet everyone is highly suspicious of him. He tells them the truth, that the Middle Easterns are not terrorists. They have no clue what's going on here. They don't know how they still have their own power, and they didn't talk to them earlier because the family was told by the father to not talk with strangers. The father just got home from work and was willing to explain everything to them, but Will told them to not come outside with everyone else out of fear that they'd face violent assessments, where Idiot Bully soon proves his point.
Look, just because they have a car that works and electricity doesn't make him a terrorist. Look, they offered to come outside. I told them not to. Not in this environment. What? What are you doing? I told them not to? What are you, their spokesman? There's a guy out here with a gun and he's scared.
Well, Dad, please.
You know what, Marshall? We're real quick to defend those people. Be one of us or one of them.
Way to put yourself in the wrong, dipstick. Seriously, he pulls out a gun to a police officer's head, proving Will's point in the process about the dangers they present, and he claims that Will is secretly helping the terrorists. He actually accuses his cop coworker of being a terrorist agent who wants the terrorists to win, even after he tells everyone that the new family have no clue as to what's going on here. Again, I have to ask all my older viewers, has anything like this really happened in the real world? Back when 9/11 and terrorism were still hot topics, was there ever a scenario where Americans drew guns on each other and accused them of being the terrorists? Did the reboot Twilight Zone truly think that this was an accurate portrayal of the 9/11 paranoia? I'm sorry, but I just don't buy it. This could all still very easily be a blackout. But everyone is so convinced that it was the terrorists in spite of having no proof. Oh, but it gets even dumber, because Will, who has been the sole voice of reason this whole time, actually makes things even worse by accusing everyone.
You think I'm a terrorist? Huh, you think I'm a terrorist? Who's the one with the gun? Who's the one that's been inciting people from the beginning? Who's the one with an intricate knowledge of every terrorist bombing? Huh? Who's the one that brought up the idea of bombing the reservoir? And what about you fellas? How come we haven't been skipping bread? What did you say your name?
You moron! This is supposed to calm everyone down? You're all terrorists! Clever! But, beyond all rhyme and reason, everyone actually trusts him now. Yep, they were ready to off him, but now they're cool just like that. What was the point of that scene?
The world may never know.
Will and the idiot bully try to make amends for now, but then the fat idiot son spots something strange from afar, where all of the neighbors very slowly approach the idiot bully's house, revealing a secret spy camera hooked onto his rooftop. Now, you would think that this means the idiot bully is going to get accused of being a terrorist as a form of karma, since the mini spy camera was attached to his home. But nope! Instead, the idiot bully accuses the mysterious new family of being terrorists again. He claims that they did all of this since the father works as an electrician on the night shift, and he has been secretly planning spy cameras on all of their houses the whole time. What? What sense does that make? If he planted all these spy cameras around the place, wouldn't somebody have heard or seen him doing it? Why isn't the idiot bully being accused of being a terrorist right now? It was right there, Twilight Zone. It was right there. The idiot bully spent the whole story being a racist, intolerant prick, and it's set up like he'll be on the receiving end for some suspicions, yet he uses this as proof that the Middle Eastern family are indeed the real terrorists after all. Yep, he's the innocent one. How? First off, the spy camera is linked to his house, and it's pointing out towards all of Maple Street. So how is he the victim here when the camera is not looking inside of his own home? The entire street soon finds spy cameras all over their homes too. But again, that makes no sense because of, oh yeah, that EMP attack. If all the power around the city was knocked out, then how are those electronic spy cameras even functioning right now?
Great continuity!
And finally, the idiot bully has spent this entire final act getting super drunk, has pointed a gun at people, yelled at them, bossed everyone around, and assaulted a police officer. Yet the whole Maple Street instantly sides with him and agrees that he was right all along. The drunken, racist, bullying, trigger-happy nut job is the one they turn to for advice and side with.
Oh, shit!
No, that is bull, Twilight Zone. You cannot expect me, or anyone else for that matter, to truly believe that this was the realistic Maple Street story after all that load of crap. Even in a paranoid, unstable 9/11 America, I cannot believe that anyone would ever side with a violent, drunk, racist redneck and form an angry mob with him as the guide. This guy has been drinking nonstop, pulling beers out of thin air, and assaulted another person in front of everyone, yet they are all dumb enough to trust his leadership. This is the definition of utter stupidity. Also, his only theory that the new family on the block are terrorists are based solely off of the fact that the father works as a night shift electrician. Apparently, he's the only electrician on the block, and the idiot devised this theory while still blind, stinking drunk, and trigger-happy. He has no solid evidence, but everyone believes him. Let's face it, this idiot bully is no Sunset Shimmer.
Sunset Shimmer, certified detective.
Spy camera on my house. The guy over there works at an electronics firm. He works at night. He's out here on the street while we're all asleep. He's the only one that would have done this.
My God, are you still talking?
I think this episode is slowly killing us all with its lethal stupidity. So, like colossal idiots, the entire street believes in the drunk, violent, moronic bully who tried to murder a cop and form an angry mob with him so they can lynch those evil terrorist Muslims for America. Wait, what? Yep, we officially have a race war and lynch mobs on the frickin' Twilight Zone, people. And if that wasn't horrible enough, we also get some incredibly awful acting from our hero.
You said we wouldn't be like this, Holly. They're coming out of there, Marshal, one way or another.
There has to be another explanation. Don't do this. Steve. Dave, come on. Corey, please.
Guys, please stop it. Don't go on a murder spree. I'm acting. Seriously, dude, that was the best performance you could give? Your neighbors are about to form a lynch mob and are about to kill a family. Yet you act like you're mildly annoyed by it. Try harder. And I kid you not, all of Maple Street grabs torches and pitchforks, rounds up together as a single group, marching like the dang Ku Klux Klan, and even pass by some innocent children who were afraid of all this madness, just to show us how evil they've become. Ooh! You see, it's a metaphor on how the adults have corrupted the innocence of these poor American children. You know, I also want to point out how different this is to the original classic. In the old story, everyone was pointing the finger at each other. Nobody was safe. Everyone was getting accused. It was every man for himself. There was guns blazing, lights flashing, glass shattering, and screams everywhere like it was a bloody war zone. But on here, they just form a lynch mob and unite to kill all Muslims on the block like a bunch of Klansmen. And I'm sorry, but it's just dumb. Not only is it dumb, it's laughably dumb. It's stupid, and it lacks any subtlety by hammering it in how Americans are unstable nutbags who falsely accuse people who are different. It's just lame. Heck, even in the original, the Maple Street residents tried to avoid forming an angry mob. You heard that too, right? They tried to avoid a mob ganging up on others, yet this version embraces it like it was the tough reality. It's just so bad. Hatred doesn't unite people. All it does is tear us apart and makes everyone a selfish monster. The old version was better. It also makes the opening where all the neighbors start off hating one another even more pointless. How did these people go from despising one another to uniting as a Klansman mob just like that?
I think it's great how our hate for other people brings us together. I love you guys.
Will tries all he can to stop the angry mob, but he fails at it. He sucks so much that even his girlfriend Holly joins the crazy team.
He's the only one that would have done this.
Yeah, there might be more.
Holly,
If it's us or them, let it be them.
you said we wouldn't be like this, Holly.
Things are different now.
Oh no, what a twist. Who could have seen this coming? They eventually make their way to the newbie house, where they demand the Muslims come out and play. Will points out the blatantly obvious that of course they're not going to come out now because there's a Klansman mob surrounding them. So naturally, the mob forces them to come out by torching down the house and killing the terrorists by burning them alive.
Everyone should break in.
No good, they're probably on.
I'll get him out.
Go, Phil.
Very even human. Rise the mouthful.
They're not like you and me, which means
They must be evil. We must stop them from the war. Now we count the drums of war. Be with me once and we count the drums of war. Let your penance, you men. Now we come to you, men. Even human, now we sound the drum.
So yay, they killed the Middle Eastern family and saved the day. Yep, the Maple Street morons murdered an innocent family thinking that they were terrorists, all because they had a few hours without any power on.
These people, can they get stupider?
Sweet Celestia, I wish they all killed each other like in the original. However, we then get to our twist ending. We see that there really was someone watching them this whole time, and the true culprits behind this entire attack all along were really the U.S. government. Yep. For reals, this was the grand groundbreaking twist we were building up to, folks. The ones instigating all the horrible environment conditions on Maple Street were not aliens, but in fact, our own government. Wow. Just wow. I didn't think it was possible, but you actually made the twist of it being aliens look a million times better in comparison. I mean, seriously? It was the United States government all along? That was so awful that it seems like it was meant to be a joke. But nope, it's not. It is played with 100% dead seriousness. Like, there is not a hint of irony or comedic intent here. We are seriously meant to believe that the US government turning Americans against each other on purpose, like they were the frickin' Illuminati, was a real horror story element. Fail, Twilight Zone. Epic fail. For those of you who are too young or fortunate enough to not know this information, some people online actually theorize that 9/11 and all terrorist attacks happening at the time were secretly being done by our own American government. It was a conspiracy that 9/11 was an inside job.
That all the 9/11 conspiracy websites are run by the government. The 9/11 conspiracy is a government conspiracy.
These were the dumbest conspiracy theories ever cooked up, claiming that our own government secretly caused 9/11 so we could have an excuse to invade the Middle East for their oil and some other crap. But obviously, none of that was true because there was zero evidence whatsoever. It was all just a dumb conspiracy theory that some people truly believed in because the terrorism fears were getting the best of our imaginations. Yet the reboot Twilight Zone thinks it was all true. In fact, it was so dumb that I could only assume that somebody working on this Twilight Zone reboot could ever come up with that belief because it was just that stupid. It really doesn't help that even South Park did this better than you guys.
So then who was responsible for 9/11? What do you mean? A bunch of pissed off Muslims?
Yeah, what are you, retarded?
What even is this? The US government was really behind it all? The government really caused mass hysteria and orchestrated phony terrorist attacks this whole time? Why? Well, you see, we cut to the Marine soldiers explaining to each other that this was all just a test to see how American citizens would react to a real terrorist attack in case one ever happened. The government set up everything throughout this whole episode just to gather up some information on how we Americans would react to terrorism. And the worst part is that they also point out that it's only been a few hours before we cracked. Yes, really, a few hours without any power on, and all of America formed a lynch mob and executed Middle Eastern people on the streets. What? That is dumb. I feel like it's important to also point out how the area was perfectly fine without electronics earlier. Remember that dumb opening with the bad rock music? We see children having fun and playing outside, not using electronics. They were perfectly fine without power for a few hours. Yet it's all the adults who panicked and went on a rampage without power shouting,
Terrorism!
The children were perfectly calm in all of this, but the adults had the mental breakdown and rage quit. The adult broke first. That is so funny. We were seriously so terrified of terrorism that a couple of hours without any power would drive us into forming lynch mobs, executing Muslims and Middle Easterns like Grand Theft Auto neo-Nazis. That is so stupid that I have no idea where to even begin with this crap. First off, no. Just no. While the US government does have its many weaknesses and screw-ups, I cannot ever see our government turning into the Illuminati and setting up phony terrorist attacks on American soil just to collect a few stats on how we'd handle power outages. The US government is super flawed, but it is not Cobra Command. In fact, if this was all a test, how do you think the government is going to address the situation when the crowd eventually calms down the next day? In the original classic, it turns out that the aliens were gaslighting humans. They drove the street mad, to the point of turning against one another. They imply that their whole strategy was to force the humans to destroy each other so they wouldn't have to. They would cause unstable violence among the public, then they would conquer what remains from the ashes of their war zone they generated. This is how they planned to conquer our entire world and possibly many other worlds. They wouldn't need to do anything at all other than take away all our power and set up distrust between the people. Then their targets would turn against each other eventually and start killing one another out of fear. The aliens forced civil wars between people. Then they would take over the remains of the annihilated world.
Of course.
A devious strategy, naturally, but it delivers a strong moral about how we let our own fears and paranoia ruin our lives because some neighbors don't trust each other, and people in general just let their fears lead them down the dark path. The terrorists didn't need to do anything. They just had to plant the seeds of distrust and watch the fireworks. The true monsters on Maple Street was humankind's inner selfishness and paranoia, not the aliens. We go crazy when we're shoved too far.
See, madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push.
However, the remake totally botches that lesson by making the US government the bad guys. It kind of says that, oh, you're not responsible for your trust issues. It's all the US government's fault. They're the bad guy. I'm not an enraged racist with serious problems. It's the government's fault because they made me think that way. The government is the real bad guy, not us. We don't have to fix anything. Yeah, way to piss all over the ingenious moral remake by turning the US government into Cobra Command. So realistic, right? Also, how exactly does the US government plan to resolve all this madness? Once the fires simmer down and daylight comes back, is the US military just going to roll in on their tanks and say, "Attention everyone, attention. The power is back online and the problem is over. There really were no terrorists at all. It was all just a test to see how you'd all react as if we were under a real attack. But don't worry, it's all over. You can all now go back to your homes and your daily lives and just move on." Yeah, the aliens wanted to destroy the world, but how exactly is the government going to resolve America tearing itself apart in the aftermath? There is no logic behind any of this planning and makes the twist even dumber when you think about it. Why would the government even test their terrorist theories on random American towns? Wouldn't it be easier to take advantage of some poor village in a different area far away? Who the heck even thought this was a good idea? Tell me, what kind of a sick, twisted, villainous president would ever greenlight such a stupid, harebrained scheme? Curse you, President Yellow! Don't blame me, I voted for Manny. So, in short, this twist is totally stupid, and the fact that the show plays it up so seriously, like as if this could really happen, only makes it all the more painful. This is a stupid twist. The US government is not Big Brother. Nobody is watching us, people. Nobody is out there secretly watching us like lab rats. No one is watching us. Do you think he's onto us? No, he's an idiot. Not like us, smarty cats. And if you can believe it or not, even the US soldiers monitoring everything are shocked to see that the civilians went completely nuts and failed the test, as they worry about America's future. Ooh. And the show hammers in this laughably awful plot point one last time with Saw Gerrera's closing narration.
Tell you one thing, if the other civilian security tests were like this, we're all in trouble.
It isn't enough for a sole voice of reason to exist. In this time of uncertainty, we're so sure that villains lurk around every corner that we will create them ourselves if we can't find them. For while fear may keep us vigilant, it's also fear that tears us apart. A fear that sadly exists only too often outside the Twilight Zone.
Whoever came up with this is an asshole!
You know, I was thinking, wouldn't it have been a better twist if this whole time the true culprits were aliens, but instead of the evil invading aliens, they were actually good aliens? Yeah, some totally innocent aliens accidentally crash-landed on this planet, but knocked out the power by mistake, and they were trying to fix it for the humans the whole time. They actually arrived to make first contact and befriend the humans, but wanted to make a positive first impression by restoring the power they took out by mistake. However, the humans instantly blamed each other and go to war with one another, just like in the old classic. When the aliens finish rebuilding their power grid, they soon see how violent we are as a society, and decide that, you know what, these humans are feral prejudice monsters who don't deserve to be allies with friendly, idealistic aliens like them, and they leave out of fear. The world destroys itself because of an accident. They don't want these savage humans among their race, and we destroy our own world as a result of not thinking things out, like in both Maple Street shorts. Yeah, it's cheesy, but you know, it has a lot more to say than the Bullcrap 2000 show remake did, and doesn't demonize the US government. Holy crap, this was bad. What were they thinking? Hey, let's make this Monsters on Maple Street remake more realistic and modern by turning everyone into one-note stereotypes of average Americans, having folks listen to the town drunk, trigger-happy racist, have the whiteys lynch the closest Muslims on the block, purge all the morals by blaming it all on some villain pulling the strings, and have the US government be the Illuminati. Perfect remake. But that was the grand finale to the 2000s Twilight Zone version of the beloved classic, Monsters Are on Maple Street. What do I have to say about it? You already know. Good lord, was that a terrible piece of crap. What can I even say that I already didn't rant on in this video? Well, this episode is simply another terrible remake on a classic people used to love, but with all the good stuff gutted out, and the moral totally botched. No argument there. But the worst thing I have to say about this, that sums it all up, is that this episode is a huge example of how a remake completely misses the point of the original. The classic Monsters Are Due on Maple Street was a cautionary tale about how we, as a society, should not get consumed by our own suspicions, paranoia, prejudice, and fear. How we should never give in to fear and accuse others of being evil, start petty squabbles with our fellow neighbors, and toss trust out of the window. It warns us about the effects fear has on us. We turn against one another when backed into a corner and blame everyone else for our problems. But in reality, that very fear destroys us. We are our own worst enemy. The terrorists just pushed us into a terrified way of thinking and let us take ourselves out. So it would be easier for them to win when a unit is not united. This remake's twist does something so stupid that it totally soils the point of the old version. It places all the blame on a single villain. By making the US government the antagonist, it demonstrates that they were the true evil ones in all of this, and not the neighbors themselves. It tells us that the true bad guys are the government because they made us into monsters, but that's not always the case. I know all the governments of the world are flawed, and I can't speak for everyone's country, but I can safely say that this is never going to happen in America. The government is not some shadow organization illegally testing us stupid civilians like lab rats. It's just a bunch of office workers and military personnel doing simple day jobs. The US government is not going to set up phony terrorist attacks to see how people would react to them. Americans are not insane enough to lynch all foreigners if our power goes out for a couple of hours. And sometimes there is just no bad guy to blame for all the problems of the world. Sometimes we have to accept that we ourselves are flawed, and negative emotions and fears drives us towards the worst path. The remake does the worst thing it ever could. It defies the strong, brilliant, brutally grim more that we are the problems too. While bad guys do exist, we need to learn self-control and trust one another, since hatred only helps spread evil. Instead, it plays the blame game and says that the government is the true bad guy here in a rather desperate attempt to be anti-patriot act, which just does not work by today. We have to stop blaming others for all our problems. Yes, there are situations where somebody else does aggravate us, but we can't pin everything horrible that happens in our daily routines on some evil mastermind, because oftentimes it's not true.
Because nobody admits anything they've done!
Look, I fear terrorism, and I do take it seriously. I know 9/11 and the other terrorist fears we had were devastating on our country, and some still are. However, if we cave into that fear, we only cause more mental issues for ourselves. We have to stay level-headed and be strong and learn to tolerate one another.
If a lot of people loved each other, the world would be a better place to live.
This episode doesn't shine a light on the evils of the US government, it just promotes our fears of terrorism by demonstrating how badly we react to a genuine threat, that even the Marine Corps quivers in shock about the dark future of America. This story didn't make terrorism fears decrease, it just made things far, far worse. It increased our fear of terrorism. In fact, it seems kind of pro-Patriot Act at times. The original classic made the antagonists some random aliens who could symbolize any enemy. They could be seen as the communists, but they could also be seen as abusive parents. But they could also be viewed as an enemy we face by today in our lives. They were a placeholder for some unknown rival that could plant fear into our minds. But the remake does the opposite and says that the US government is evil, soiling that dreaded unknown the original made. It's stupid, SJW, nonsensical, plot-hole-ridden bullcrap that just wanted to be political for the sake of sounding smart. But it's not. It's not intelligent, it's not new, it's not original, it's not refreshing to watch, and it's not good. The only good moments in this belong on a different horror tale entirely, or were plot elements that were great on the good version of this story. This episode dumps all over a good morality tale in favor of scapegoating an easy target as a monster. It does the whole cringy, the US government are the real monsters statement that's been done to death, and makes numerous jabs at the government that even Bad Egg was better at. The main characters are all one-dimensional cartoons who are in no way relatable to people outside of the Klansmen. The Middle Eastern family off-screen are just a prop being used for some cheap drama. The horror is practically non-existent. The plot is full of continuity errors and logic holes sinking the story. Forrest Whitaker is the only good actor in this. The lessons are ruined, and worst of all, it is dated. The terrorist themes are just out of date. They do not hold up well, and just come across as laughable by today's standards. Unlike the original, which was a timeless work of art, the remake is pretty much a product of the time. It came from another era we abandoned long ago. It's a relic from the past that should be reburied. So, I grant this horrible, horrible remake a decayed skull. I mean it. This one sucks. I seriously don't recommend it. Well, I might recommend it as a so bad it's good comedy, because that is ultimately the only way I can view it as something worth sitting through. The only highlights in this are some excellent visuals, and Forrest Whitaker taking all of this seriously. Bless his heart. Outside of all that, this episode is pure garbage. I am not very fond of it, and I will really pray that no more remakes like this one get made by Jordan Peele. This episode's good moments mostly came from the original classic, which is of course better in every way you could imagine. So go watch that. The remake Monsters Are on Maple Street is a total fail bomb that deserves to be lost forever in the dark realm known as obscurity. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, or just tune in for more videos posted here on Wolf Entertainment. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and if you disagree with my opinions, then you want the terrorists to win.
What can you expect from filthy little heathens? Here's what you get when races are diverse. This in the hellish bed. They're only good when dead. They're vermin, as I said, and worse. Barely even human. Rise up from our shores. They're not like you and me, which means they must be evil. We must tumble from the war. They're savages, savages, dirty, freaking devils. Now we sound the drums of war. This is what we feared. The pale face is a demon.